convened by the Conference of Heads to address this situation. At that meeting, there were discussions surrounding, one, the status of the disease, and Dr. Charles alluded to some issues which were discussed. Ideally, in order for us to move forward with a full understanding of the disease process, yes, we require more testing, but we are not in an ideal world, and that in itself is a major challenge. So one of the outcomes, because there's a global shortage of supplies related to testing and managing the disease. And if we all have been following the news and we are aware of that. We are small, quote unquote, relatively small players on the global scene. And as business persons, you will understand better than most others the issue of economies of scale. So one of the things, one of the strategic decisions was, look, procurement is important. We have to find the most efficient way of procuring what is needed. And with that in mind, we have explored possibilities such as pooled procurement. One sub-region, the OECS, has that operation. But for this particular situation, we think that it might not be the optimal. And for that reason, we are working closely with the PAHO WHO Procurement Service, which has a wider reach and for these specific goods. And that's one of the areas, one of the strategic decisions that we have to coordinate and exercise solidarity and collaboration as best we can. Now, the other thing is that the heads, member states, have taken the leadership decision and they have communicated with the international financial institutions, because in order to procure, to address the issues outlined by Van West, it requires resources. I don't have to go into the details of why that is so, especially in an environment where our economies have received a significant blow. And in that meeting, in fact, the president of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Warren Smith, gave an outline of some of the challenges which we have. And you will be aware that we have some serious challenges ahead of us. So one of the things is to address the issues of resource mobilization in the region. And you, as a private sector, will play a very important role in working collaboratively with the policymakers, private and public persons, industry, to chart the way forward. So one of the strategic decisions was we need to develop a public health policy protocol to guide the movement. We are in more or less a mitigation phase of the disease now. But if we are to open up our ports, airports, seaports, we will need to be guided by science. So the Council of Ministers of Health have been mandated with the relative institutions. And I want to say the Caribbean Public Health Agency, which is the regional lead public health agency, has been excellent in helping to chart the way forward. And we have many other regional institutions that have been working closely, coordinated by the Secretariat. So that public health policy will address some of the issues raised by Dr. Van Charles. So we are going to be meeting next week to fine-tune that. Then the issue of, started, Wesley, discussing about a common regional space. Yes, that is part of the CSME regime, and we want to use this opportunity to see how we can use that to move forward. But that will require also a common policy of border policy. How do our people move from one jurisdiction to the next? There are challenges, but it is for that reason why strategically we have to come up with that policy to guide the way forward. Now, I wish to inform also that the various regional institutions have been meeting, and so to the councils of ministers, addressing different aspects. One very important one is food security. Again, you guys are in business, you know that we are heavily dependent on the importation of food. Unfortunately so. We hope that this is an opportunity for us to address some of those challenges by making the region more self-dependent on our own foods. But it is not there yet. And the CARDI, that is the Caribbean Agriculture Agents Institute, they are working on it. They have already submitted some proposals, because you know that the source countries that supply most of our food that imported into the region, they themselves have challenges of supply chains. And we have to be prepared. We have seen already that with the procurement of even medical supplies, it's, as we see in the Caribbean, each man for themselves. And so we have to be wary of that. And some of the issues we're discussing, some of the strategic approaches will address things like that. The issue of procurement of medical supplies, as I was saying, the Prime Minister, after that meeting, actually, we had a meeting with a teleconference with the Director General of the WHO, which involved the CARICOM Secretariat, CARFA, and the Prime Minister's office. And the DG was made aware of some of the procurement challenges and has promised to use his influence to assist the region in procuring the well-needed supplies, like the testing, because we can't really move forward safely without proper testing. So, as I said, I can sum up now that there are several strategic moves that the region has proposed. We are working on them. The heads are supposed to be meeting in another 2 weeks to get feedback from the various ministerial councils, and the various institutions will be involved in developing these policies. So I may have missed out a few things, but as we go along, I can update you on others. So yes, the region has been very much engaged. We are fortunate to have had the leadership from the political level, from the by the Conference of Heads, from the administrative level, from the Secretary General and the Secretariat, from the technical level, from the CARFA and the other regional institutions, because moving around in the region will involve like the implementing agency for crime and security. They have to control what as you may know, people who are traveling by air, we have what we call advanced passenger information service, where you can sort of track the movement of people, and this is useful in tracking the disease. So if you can track what we call persons of interest. So there's a lot been going on in the background that the average citizen might not know, but fortunately, you will notice that the what they call the epic curve, we have been, I would say, and we can cross fingers, thus far the region has done fairly well in maintaining the curve low, so that we can manage, because we have health systems that are not equipped to handle an onslaught of this disease. But so far, I think it is fair to say we have been doing fairly well. Let's hope it continues like that. Over. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Slater. I want to go to Orlando, Florida, to Laverne Mc Gee. Laverne, and I want to ask you to address the role of the media in helping to promote the efforts that would help the region to cushion the worst effects of this crisis and to come back to some sense of normalcy in the not too distant future.
Hi, Wesley. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the panel. I would like to also extend my greetings to the Honorable J. Andre Laveau, the Consul General of New York, who is on the call, and I have been working with him trying to also gather efforts as to how the diaspora can help the Caribbean region. So he is on the call, and hello to him and everybody else on the call. As a member of the media, I have been privileged to have access to government and business leaders like never before, simply because the world has never seen a crisis like this. America in particular is not used to being able to deal with these types of crises. And you're seeing companies as big as Disney having trouble because, of course, they had to shut down. Tomorrow they will be furloughing 70,000 employees. This is huge in terms of relevance in the history of America in terms of what's happening here. As we all know, the Caribbean region, as well as other countries, will be affected by what is happening in America. The supply chain is disrupted. Food chains are disrupted. Supply and demand, all of these issues. So for the media, we are trying to, one, get as much information as we can to give to as many people as possible, and two, to try to also offer connections, suggestions, those sorts of things to make sure that the right people are getting the right information. So the focus, there's 3 phases, which we've been discussing here, which is the initial phase of the health aspect and getting it under control. The second phase is transition, trying to transition once things are under control, transitioning to a new norm, which is what they're referring to it as, a new norm. Most people understand society may never go back the way it is, going to movie theaters, large gatherings, all those types of things. So the final phase would be, what does it look like when we come out? So you have to have leaders, both government, business, chambers, grassroots, groups of people looking at those different phases, participating in different phases to make sure there's a smooth transition to get through this. The goal for many business leaders here is they're saying they want to find ways to come out of this better than they went in, which sounds unbelievable. But that's the way big businesses think here. They're looking at things like artificial intelligence, doing different things with the food chain. Food supply is very big, and of course the Caribbean may be able to, because they have land and growing facilities, they may be able to take advantage of that. You're seeing problems with the medical, the health systems in America. It is exposing the fact there's not enough masks, there's not enough gowns, there's not enough ventilators. Medical tourism in the Caribbean, certain islands on the other end of this in phase 3, they may be able to take advantage of this. So the idea is that taking your top minds and trying to find ways to find different teams. So a team for the first phase that we're in right now, a team for the transition phase, and teams for the what it looks like on the other end of this, which is finding new ways for the economy to survive and grow. The Caribbean, of course, has a huge diaspora. Now will be the time for them to tap into the diaspora, to build those relationships and networks, to find ways to assist. Global type of supply and demand, global businesses, global education is going to be the direction, because now single economies are not able to survive independently, as we're seeing here in America, which is so unusual because people usually think we can thrive here on our own, and we're seeing we're so reliant on China for masks and ventilators and these sorts of things. So the media is trying to get the word out, trying to put people together, trying to get information, make sure it gets to the right people, get feedback, promote whatever needs to be promoted, get various government leaders on the air, business leaders, really brainstorming together, because this is unprecedented what we're seeing. Wesley.
Okay. Thank you, Laverne. And you talk about big business, and indeed, I want to turn to Mr. Komal Samaroo, who is the chairman of the West Indies Rum and Spirits Producers Association. As you know, rum production is a major